On the line with us, our old friend Ralph Nader. He is the consumer advocate, former candidate for president, the author of numerous books, including most recently Breaking Through Power, It's Easier Than We Think, founder of the nonprofit, the Center for Study of Responsive Law, CSRL. You can tweet him at Ralph Nader. And he has a upcoming workshop. It's titled Trump Empire, the Military Budget, the Draining of America, and What You Can Do About It Now. It's going to be held at the Rowe Center in Rowe, Massachusetts. That's R-O-W-E, and the website for that is Rowe, R-O-W-E, center.org. Ralph Nader, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Thom Hartmann, the most erudite talk show host in America.
Well, thank you, sir. It's an honor to hear from you. Mick Mulvaney has now confessed to running an influence peddling scheme out of his congressional office. And apparently he's doing the same thing at the Center for, the CFPB, the Center for, that protects Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And, you know, Elizabeth Warren calling this out and asking about it. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I've asked Mick Mulvaney resign. He has violated his oath of office to enforce the laws of the land, and he makes no bones about it. He basically tells the financial industry, the banks, the insurance companies, the credit card companies, you name it, give us money and we'll talk to you. And the implication is, backed up by his actions at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which he is now heading, backed up by those actions, Tom, he's basically taken the corporate crime beat and said, we don't want any federal cops. We don't want any law and order. We're perfectly content to let the American people be ripped off by penalties, fees, overcharges, outrageous interest rates. When they borrow money, whether it's credit card or whether it's from the banks, and whether it's payday loan rackets or installment loan rackets, it's okay with him. It's not okay with the Constitution. He swore to uphold the laws under the Constitution. He was at his confirmation hearing in the Senate, where he reassured the senators in order to get confirmed that he would do that, and he is now systemically violating it. That, to me, is a high crimes and misdemeanor impeachment cause, and we're not used to impeaching high officers of the U.S. government, but we should get used to it, because along with Scott Pruitt, the wrecking crew head of the Environmental Protection Agency, who is basically perfectly content with the American people breathing more toxic air and drinking dirtier water, by rolling back regulations and standards, he should resign as well.
So, you know, in 1973, or 74, after all of the Nixon scandals, Congress passed some pretty strong legislation regarding campaign finance reform and you know, the ability of candidates and billionaires to get together and sell, you know, BS to the American people. And these have been systematically overturned by the Supreme Court, starting in 1976 with the Buckley decision. You know, and it seemed to me like as soon as Lewis Powell was put on the court back in 73, I think it was, that direction became inevitable. You know, the author of the Powell memo about how corporations and billionaires should take over our government and all the major institutions of American society, civil society. Given how the Supreme Court, with Citizens United and Buckley and McCutcheon and all these other decisions, have basically sided with the billionaire class against small d democracy, what, Ralph Nader, do you think that we should be doing?
Well, when you have big money in politics by the big banks and drug companies and other large global corporations, that money attracts candidates who want to do their bidding. They're for sale or for rent. That crowds out candidates who want to honestly represent you, the people. And as a result, that money nullifies your vote, because the choices you have on the ballot narrow. Sometimes it's only one in the gerrymandering of congressional districts. Only one really can win, either Democrat or Republican, depending on who controls the state government. And And as a result, you know, they're telling all you voters out there, regardless whether you're conservatives or liberals, you can go stuff it, as they say in Australia. And the only way to really change that is two ways. One, constitutional amendment, basically saying corporations are not people, that they cannot have all the rights and plus all the immunities and privileges we'll never have as individuals, and still call ourselves a democracy. And the second is to say that any corporations that do business with the federal government cannot donate money to politicians, because that's like a conflict. That's
right.
Corrupting. And that can be done without a constitutional amendment. And it's amazing that the Democratic Party has not taken the lead in Congress on that. Basically said, look, corporations, you're receiving hundreds of billions of dollars every year from taxpayers in return for contracts and grants and other things. And you're not going to pay the people who are considering who gets the contracts money for their campaigns, members of Congress, White House. And that is one way to sideline a lot of these corporations under that Supreme Court decision called Citizens United, which said the corporations can give endless, limitless money, literally, to any candidate, for or against any candidate in local, state, and federal elections, and that's perfectly proper. 5-4 decision.
Right. Right. This is a tough one. You also wrote a recent piece titled "Stopping War Pusher John Bolton, Trump's Choice for National Insecurity Advisor." John Bolton is now in that office, and the other day he said that we should be guided in our policy efforts with North Korea by the Libya experience. Now, my recollection of the Libya experience is that we went to Gaddafi, who had a nuclear power plant, and he had set up a centrifuge operation, was trying to refine uranium up to that 90% necessary for making bombs. And we went to him and said, get rid of your nuclear capability, and we will essentially protect you. And Gaddafi said, okay, cool, and he got rid of his nuclear capability, and then the administration changed, and we went in and killed him. I can't imagine that Kim Jong-un would be reassured by the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, saying we should do with North Korea the same thing we did with Libya. What's going on here, Ralph Nader?
What's going on is that Trump has put in the White House the super war hawk of war hawks, and he's not very smart. Just like you said, you don't get the head of North Korea interested in negotiating for arms reduction when you talk about Hillary Clinton toppling Gaddafi against the wishes of then Secretary of State Gates, because he knew it was going to happen after toppling Gaddafi in a tribal society, total chaos, violence spilling into Mali and other neighboring African countries to this day.
Right.
So John Bolton should be confirmed by the Senate. There are legal scholars from Professor Larry Tribe to Louis Fisher, the legendary constitutional law scholar at the Library of Congress for years, who say that unless Congress specifically exempted that post, the National Security Advisor to the White House, that post is confirmable by the Senate. Now, if the Senate followed the law, he would never be confirmed, because the Republicans in the Senate dislike him. They wouldn't even confirm him in 2005 when President George W. Bush nominated him to be ambassador to the UN. Bush had to give him a recess appointment where he was there for a year at an institution he despised. And so John Bolton has written articles saying we should bomb North Korea, we should overthrow the government of Iran, we should allow the Israelis to militarily annex the West Bank in Palestine. He fought Condoleezza Rice, his boss then, Secretary of State, and went to the Israeli ambassador to the UN and told the Israeli ambassador to get his government to pressure George W. Bush and stop trying to negotiate a ceasefire when Israel invaded Lebanon in 2006. I mean, imagine the insubordination here. I talked to Colin Powell twice personally about John Bolton, and he thinks that John Bolton is a danger, that he is disreputable, that he does not tell the truth. And he's right. Colin Powell was his boss for a time at the State Department. And in 2002, John Bolton, just on his own, released a statement saying that Fidel Castro was engaged in developing chemical and biological weapons. And when I was down in Cuba interviewing Castro a few months after that, Castro told me he was horrified. He thought that was a precursor to the U.S. invading Cuba. And, of course, it was false. And Colin Powell said it was false, overrode his subordinate. That doesn't stop this bull in the China shop trying to get the U.S. and U.S. soldiers and families into more wars overseas. By the way, he didn't particularly like to join the armed forces when he was younger. He was like all those neocons
Ralph,
who loved
we
the
have
war.
to...